Today, episode 40 of the Play Guitar podcast is all about licks and riffs for the guitar player. I show the importance and the difference between them and how to use them effectively. So stay tuned. Guitar licks and riffs are so cool and they're so much fun. You grab your guitar, you learn a few notes, and you're playing your favorite songs or your favorite parts of songs in an instant. They're one of the big reasons we put so much time into learning the guitar. Being able to play just like or close to our favorite songs and players, it's a big rush. It can be addicting and it starts right away. You remember the first time you played something on the guitar that sounded just like one of your favorite songs? I remember that. It was awesome. So you got the tab or the lesson video, you spent some time working it out, and before you know it, you're smiling and you're having the best time. And as you progress over time, you start to pick up a good deal of these little musical statements. They might be the main part of a really well-known song, or they could just be a small part of a guitar solo. They sound cool and you can play them over and over without getting tired of them. Today, I'm talking about licks and riffs. They're very important, but they're easily confused. I go over what they are, how they're different, why would you want to learn other guitarists' licks in the first place, or riffs, how do you come up with them, ways to get the most of them, and I'll give you some examples of some riffs that I made today to demonstrate how to make them and what their value is to the guitar player. I'd always heard about licks and riffs, but I never thought too much about it. I set out to learn the songs that I loved and all the parts. That's what I did. Even with all of my lessons and with all of my different teachers I had, I would learn a lick or a riff, but it was never really clear what the difference was. It was never really spelled out for me. In fact, thinking back on it, most of the time, I would use those two words interchangeably. But now, knowing just how important guitar licks and riffs are to players, I can see there's a lot of benefit in really understanding what these two terms really mean. Once you understand them and what their differences are, you can use these great devices to your advantage. So for me, I really began playing lead guitar a lot, getting my guitar licks and song riffs in order. That gave me the tools I needed to feel comfortable playing in bands and being able to perform in front of people. So I love bringing this to students' attention and start building a good collection of both of these. It helps move forward and gives clarity to even players who are experienced. So let's go ahead and let's take a good look at what licks and riffs are. Let's start with riffs. A riff is a musical device that's very strong and very memorable. It's a very commonly repeats. And you can think of it as like the main hook of a song. It's not the solo and it's not fills. It's the main part. So here's some examples of songs with great riffs: Smoke on the Water, Enter Sandman, Iron Man, Sunshine of Your Love, Seven Nation Army. There's tons of them. The guitar line becomes a theme that you can think of as the song. It's synonymous with the song. For example, when you think of Smoke in the Water, do you think about the lyrics? I don't even really know what the lyrics are of the song, but I know that riff. It becomes the calling card to the song. Okay, so that's riffs. How about licks? What are licks? Licks are devices that are they're a small part of something larger. They're usually short, and they could be in a solo, or you could put them in fills during the song. They can also be used as a transition to go from one point to the other, or just as some kind of decoration. Licks can also be used to give a familiar sound, your sound, and you can use it again and again in different songs. You can easily change them to fit the circumstance that you're in, and then you can expound on there's the big word for today, expound on them to create new licks. They can sound very cool, but they're not epic. They're not the centerpiece of the song. Okay, the best way to find signature licks is to listen to a lot of different solos from a particular artist. And the more you listen, the more you'll start hearing something. You start hearing some things in common, especially from blues players. If you listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan or B.B. King or Eric Clapton, they have some common phrases that are in all of their songs. They change them a little bit, but you start to hear them. Those are licks. And those are things that the player thinks represents their own sound, their own style. So they like to use them more than just once. Okay, how similar are licks and riffs? They're very similar. In fact, they're mistaken for each other a lot. If you just type in guitar licks into a Google search, a lot of the results you get are actually for riffs. They're for something different. But they're similar. They both are made out of shorter musical phrases, and they're both mostly based on single note lines. But you will find that occasionally that you'll see some chords that go along with those single note lines too. How are they different? How are licks and riffs different? Here, this is it. Here's where we really start to classify these small phrases, and we can start using them to our advantage. Riffs tend to use chords a lot more than licks do because they're usually the main theme of the song. A few good chords can really fill out a great riff, and it adds to the sound of the riff. It sounds strong. It's really nice. So there's no rules, and licks can have chords in them at times if you want to. There's no rules to it, but usually guitar licks are just single note runs. Guitar riffs tend to be voiced lower than licks too because they're a big structure of the song. Riffs tend to be more down. Let's see here. More down in the lower part of the guitar than licks are. Guitar licks are usually voiced higher because they're usually part of an instrumental lead of some sort. They're played in a higher register. That way they cut through the mix better. You can hear them over all the instruments. So this kind of low versus high comparison, it works most of the time, but it's not always the case. Take Sweet Child of Mine. You know, the main riff of that song, way up here, it's voiced very high on the guitar, but it's still a riff. It's a major part of the structure of the song. Well, another surefire way to know if you've got a riff is if it follows a bass line. A lot of these classic riff-based songs, the guitar and the bass, they double the riff. It gives it a much greater impact to the song. And the last way that riffs and licks are different is that riffs tend to repeat a lot. In the same way that chords repeat a lot in a song, riffs will repeat over and over and over again, and that keeps the song moving forward. All right, why would you want to learn other guitar players' licks and riffs? Guitar licks they're the bread and butter of lead guitar. They're very important. To further your skills as a lead player, it's very valuable to be able to understand what other influential players they've done. So understanding the classic guitar licks of a certain style of music or a certain player, it's very similar to learning a language. The licks, they're the common phrases that you'll hear. And they can kind of create the atmosphere that's appropriate to the style of music that you're playing. And once you're able to play this language, you can then take what's common to that style, change it a little bit, put your own spin on it, and you've got something really good. Learning riffs, it's different than the licks. Learning riffs has a different value to guitar players because, well, being able to play and understand where these classic guitar parts came from, that's a really valuable tool for songwriting. When you can see how the scales and the chords and the rhythm are used to make an effective riff, you'll be able to take that information and use it in your own songs. It doesn't take a whole lot to change a riff, and it won't sound anything like the original one with some small changes, but it might still have the same vibe to it, and that's what we're looking for. How do you come up with guitar licks and riffs? How do you do it? Well, in a perfect world, you would just be inspired. They would just come to you and you'd have great ideas on the fly. And sometimes that happens, but most often it doesn't. For me, the best ideas come from analyzing the licks and riffs of the songs I love of other guitar players, and then trying to come up with something similar for myself. Learning and changing. That's what I do. So Find the solos or the song riffs that affect you, the ones that make you happy, make you want to play guitar, and spend some time trying to learn them. But don't stop there. Once you know them, once you really figure them out, keep on. The trick is to, like I said before, make small changes that could completely change a riff or lick into something new and unique, something that's no one's ever heard before, but it still has that vibe that you want to get across. Something I really think is amazing is the sheer amount of music, of different music that there is to listen to. There's only 12 notes in Western music. That's it. 12. Everything we do as songwriters or as guitar players, bass player, anything, they're just different combinations of 12 notes. And the way you arrange these 12 notes can be completely unique to you. To me, that's amazing. Okay, so small changes with these 12, we can come up with all sorts of stuff. So how do you get the most out of them? How do you get the most out of licks and riffs? So by now, you should have a good understanding of what they are. But how are we going to use these? The first is to know what you want out of them. When you come up with a cool idea on the guitar, stop and think to yourself, would this be better suited for like a song, for like a riff? Or is this something that is it best used for something in many different songs? Something that you could play a little bit here, play a little bit there. Make a clear distinction early on. And when you do this, you're much more likely to put these ideas that you come up with to work in something that you can share with others. So another way we can do it is keep a wish list of riffs and licks that you want to learn. It happens to me a lot. I'll be, I don't know, watching TV or a movie, or maybe I'm out in a store and I'm shopping, and I hear something and I go, man, I'd love to learn that on the guitar. And I try to make a mental note of what the song was. And by the time I'm ready to start practicing, I can't remember anything. I don't remember what it was. I don't even remember where I heard it. But so what I use is I use Google Keep. But you can use anything, any note-taking app on your phone, and to keep a wish list of songs that is available at all times. So when you hear something, bam, write it down and you're good. Okay? Here's another tip. Learn just one lick or riff at a time and set aside some time to really understand it. At some point, you need to know the why. Why does this sound so cool? What scales? What chords? What makes it distinctive from the other things? What got your attention? It could be the rhythm of it. It could be the register that was played. It could even just be something as easy as the tone the guitar player used, what amps and what pedals. Or it could be the arrangement of the part. Maybe the whole band cut out and it was just the guitar at that part. But start to analyze it. Analyzing music is tough at first, and you're bound to not get everything correct right away. But that's all right. It's a lot like exercising. The more you do it on a regular basis, the easier it gets. There have been several times where I spent the time to really understand something I was interested in, and then it really paid off. The one thing I learned, it could unlock many different songs and many different solos that were kind of similar to that. So that's a good thing. Also, a change of mindset is crucial to getting the most out of licks and riffs. Instead of thinking, if I could only play that, I'd be happy. Try changing that. Try thinking something more like this. If I could only come up with something as cool as that, then I'd be happy. Just memorizing licks and riffs, it leaves a lot on the table. Trying to copy someone else, especially a famous guitar player, it's a lot of fun, but there's a lot more to it. There's so much more to these little devices that we're learning that you could use to really move forward as a musician. I've seen a lot of very good students who knew a lot of songs, a lot of famous licks. But then when it was time to get into a band, they were very frustrated. They tried out, they rehearsed, and they just weren't communicating with the other members. They were trying to force these licks into songs that probably it wasn't appropriate to put them in. Playing music is always like having a conversation. You have to be able to communicate to move the music forward. Just playing other people's licks all the time, it's a lot like answering other people's questions with like quotes, like famous quotes. It's awkward and it's very impersonal. So it's something not a good thing. So I wanted to play for you a few examples of some easy riffs and licks that I came up with today that show you the difference between riffs and licks and also about how I came up with them. I tabbed them out for you. They're over at playguitarpodcast.com/040. The link will be in the description below. All these are pretty easy and they're at a medium tempo, and I'll go through them and then also show you the licks and how to change them a little bit to make them your own. This first one is kind of an up bluesy riff I came up with. It's in the key of G. I wanted something that was catchy, something that sounded good if it had to be repeated a lot. So I just used the basic notes from the minor pentatonic scale. Let's take a listen to this. Let me get my sheet up here. Okay, I'm going to loop this too. Hey, the looper. Okay, well, there it is. That is, nothing fancy. It sounds like a few other songs I know. I don't know if it's exactly, I don't know if it's too close to one. I'm not sure about that. But there it is. Not hard to do. Just notes from the pentatonic scale. Super easy. Got you a riff. Let's talk about a lick. So next I came up with a lick that you might use in the same style. It's in G as well. It uses the minor pentatonic scale just like the other one, but the difference is it's not quite so repetitive. It's in a higher register and uses some bended notes. So let's take a look at this. Here it is again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the first one and the first riff, and I'm going to play this lick over top of it, and then I'm going to kind of go do some more things with it. Let's take a listen. All right, so you could hear that lick in there, but I started messing around with it, adding some more things to it. Pretty neat, pretty neat. Okay, so next I switched keys. I went to the key of E minor this time, and I tried to come up with something a little bit funkier and a little bit heavier. Take a listen. Notice at the end the power chords I used that are in conjunction with the single notes. So let me get this going here. All right. Okay, I'm going to loop this too. All right, so a little bit different, has a different vibe to it, but it's still easy. It's still using the minor pentatonic notes, not even as many as it is in the other one, and pretty nice. Now I came up with a lick, and this one doesn't have a really bluesy sound like the other ones. For this one, I used the full natural minor scale for this, the E natural minor scale. It's in a very high register. I also added some 16th note triplets just for fun on that. So let's pull this up here. Sit down. All right. Oh. That's it right there. Let's okay. We're using position 3, 2, and 1 kind of spread across those three positions. in E natural minor up top. I'm going to go ahead and try and play this over top of the last riff we used. See if I can come up with something good. Let's take a listen. 1, 2, ready, go. Okay, so I played the lick, messed around with it a little bit, did some other stuff, came back to it, got some interesting sounds on that. Okay, so here's my challenge for you. This week, let's get to work. Let's learn a new riff and a new lick that you like and try to figure out why it sounds so good and then change it to make it your own. What do you think about that? You up for the challenge? I am. I think I'm going to do it too. So let us know how you did in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me for the podcast today, and I will see you on the next episode.